Hello guys and welcome to today's session. Today we are going to talk about reporting in Intune. So guys, let's just take a look over today's agenda real quick. First, we are going to talk about the mere basics. We are going to talk about what is the background, why do we need reporting, what are the different kinds of reporting requirements. And we'll talk about how to generate reports. How did we generate reports earlier? We'll do a flashback and then we'll see how the reporting in Intune existed earlier versus how the reporting is right now, as in what has changed over the years as far as reporting in Intune is concerned. We'll talk about the various ways of generating the reports, and then in this nugget, I will actually do a deep dive on Power BI integration with Intune. So Power BI is a tool which we'll talk about later on, and we'll see that how Power BI, once integrated with Intune, can also be used for reporting purposes. So this nugget is going to be a deep dive on that. And then obviously we'll do a demo wherein we'll talk about how exactly to get those customized reports. Okay. So let's just get started. And first, let's just talk about. So, guys, if you're from an SECM background, or even if you have worked on the on-premise infrastructure, or if you have worked on any other MDM, we all know the importance of having a report, right? So, in SECM, you guys would have known that via SECM, we have the ability of getting a very granular report, right? However, that was not the case historically with Intune. Historically, as we will see in the future slides, that historically getting a report from Intune was very cumbersome, as well as it didn't give us all the information that we might need. Now it has improved to a it has improved a lot to a great extent. Still, if you compare it with SECM, then well, obviously we are not at par with SECM, but then I mean a lot has changed, and we will see what has changed in the future slides. But before we do that, let's just do a little flashback. So, well, as we all know, the very first version of Intune was released in 2011, and at that point of time, we were basically concerned and concentrated on PC management. So back in 2011 to 2015 or 16, we had an agent from Intune called the Intune PC agent, which we had to install on the Windows 7 devices, just like we install an SCCM client. And using that agent, the communication used to happen. And from Intune console itself, we could get a report on all the devices that are being managed via Intune and few of the attributes of those devices. However, as time progressed, we moved from just being concentrated on Windows 10 PC management to mobile device management, wherein we talked about how we can enroll an Android, iOS, Mac OS device, and which had its own requirements as far as reporting is concerned. However, initially, Intune was only concentrated on cloud-based PC management, which was managing Windows 7 devices over the internet. And the reporting was also made keeping that in mind. So once we had Android and iOS devices, once we had the ability of enrolling Android and iOS devices, the reporting was not updated to that extent. Therefore, we had a lot of issues. Now, before we talk about what those issues were and how we address them, let's just do a basic check and talk about what is the need for reporting. We all know that. We all know why reporting is needed, and we all know that in any enterprise organization, uh, it all comes down to our inventory, right? We at the end need to have an inventory of all the devices we are managing, all the policies that are going down to the device, how the devices are behaving, what is the trend. And because if we have the reporting, only then we can first present it to the management, and second, act upon the report and make our infrastructure better. Okay, so long story short, that is the need of reporting, and it has always happened. So, I mean, if we have something like a group policy set up, wherein devices are joined to the on-prem domain, over there also we have the ability of generating all kinds of reports from our domain controller to find out what are the group policies going down to all the OUs. Similarly, if we have some patching tool or something like SECM, from there also we can get reports of all the devices. And that is the similar intent that we have as far as reporting from Intune is concerned. So again, just a little theoretical stuff. The need of reporting is it gives us an effective way to monitor the health and activity of the endpoints. So from Intune, we can see how we can get a report wherein we can see how often a device is checking in with Intune. If it is not checking in quite often, then we know that there might be something related to networking, or I mean that explains why we would actually need a report so that we can monitor how a device is doing. Delivering an improved employee experience by having visibility to the Intune reported data in a focused and a fast way. So if we are getting a consolidated report, just by looking at the report, we can know that how the device is doing, how the infrastructure is doing, how the enrollments are going, what are the errors that we are getting. So it's like kind of an self-explanatory. We can identify the usage of apps. So this is like specific to Intune, but I mean, as far as the need of reporting is concerned, the logic is the same everywhere. The logic of having reporting in any organization is the same. That is having a central database as well as having a point of reference upon which we can act upon. And again, Intune's reporting also acts as inventory collector. We can get a list of all the devices being managed, all the policies that are being applied, and I mean, a, a kind of like a place wherein we are keeping a track of everything that is being implemented. And as far as Intune is concerned, we can get a report of MAM as well as MDM, which we will see later how we can do that from the portal as well as using other tools available at hand. So so now let's just talk about reporting, not in general, but reporting as far as Intune is concerned. So one of the things obviously that we need to keep in mind is, well, reporting needs to cater the needs of the administrator, wherein he needs to make sure that he's aware how his infrastructure is doing. However, the reporting requirements is not the same for everybody. Let's just say that I am a manager and I need a report from Intune portal. So my requirement might be different as compared to, let's just say I am an Intune admin or a help desk admin and I need an access to a report from the Intune portal. So a manager's requirement would be something like 1,000 feet overview of the tenant, wherein he would like to say, okay, how many devices we have, how are we doing with the management, what kinds of policies we have, whether we have a specific kind of policy or not, or whether we have a specific kind of policy for all the operating systems or not, whether we have a specific kind, whether we have conditional access or not, whether we have compliance policy or not, whether that compliance parameter check is being made by the conditional access or not, and whatnot. So that would be a requirement for an manager from a manager's perspective as far as reporting is concerned. However, as far as a help desk employee is concerned or an Intune admin is concerned, his reporting requirements would be very different. He would be using the reporting more often than not to troubleshoot issues. So he would be looking into the trends and the graphs, and he would be seeing how often policy is failing, how many non-compliant devices do we have, on which parameter a device is becoming non-compliant more often than not, and then probably let's just say that a device is becoming not compliant because it doesn't have a password limit to set to 5, right? Then probably a help desk admin might make a corresponding device configuration profile wherein he would say that all the devices should have a password character of 5, a password limit of 5 characters, which would enforce the end users to set that password limit. So what I'm trying to say is that reports can be generated from Intune, but the reporting requirements might be different. Different people might require different kind of reports, and Intune caters to that. What I mean by that is in Intune we have the ability of generating different kind of reports, which I will show you in a while, which caters to all the kinds of use cases, which caters to how a report might be, what kind of report a manager would need versus what kind of report a Intune technician or a help desk technician might need. Okay. All right. So now let's just talk about methods of generating report from Intune. So as I said, when we are going to talk about methods of generating reports, a broad classification or a broad segregation of this would be into two parts. Let's just say this is one and this is two. So the first part is how the reports were generated conventionally. When I say conventionally, I'm talking about back in 2013, 14, 15, 16-ish. And then we will talk about the second method, which I'm referring to as the modern method of generating a report from Intune, wherein we made a lot of changes in the framework that is being used to generate a report, and then we will talk about the advantages. So in what we are going to study now is methods of generating reports via Intune. The first is the legacy method, and the second is the modern method. Legacy method is what existed long back, and modern method is something that is in use now. And then we'll talk about the differences. So the legacy method of generating a report from Intune was first obviously from the Intune console, and then second was deploying something called an hybrid infrastructure. We'll talk about what both of these are one by one. So let's just first talk about the how we could conventionally get a report from the Intune console. Again, this was back in, let's just say, 2014, 15, 16. So back in 2014, 15, 16, if you had had a chance to play with the Intune console, the Intune console looked way different. So that console was referred to as the Silverlight portal, and it looked something like this. So this is the Intune Silverlight portal, and this was primarily uh, in kept in mind on how a Windows 7 PC is going to be managed. So in the way this worked is we had to download an agent from the portal and then install that agent on the endpoints, just like we do in case of SECM. And that agent was used for communication between the devices and the Intune portal. And then once the device started communicating with the Intune portal, we could get some reports from the Intune portal, which we'll talk about what kind of reports we could get. But I mean, this was a legacy method, and this existed 5 or 6 years back. Now, as we are all aware that the Silverlight portal is decommissioned, and now the portal that we use is referred to as the Ibiza console. So earlier it was portal.azure.com, then it was devicemanagement.microsoft.com, and now we have recently changed it to Endpoint Manager, right? So Endpoint Manager is like which has brought both SCCM and Intune under the same umbrella. So we are referring to that as the Ibiza console, but earlier this was the console that we had. This is a Silverlight console. I know few of you might be looking at this for the very first time. Unfortunately, now there is no way for you to access the Silverlight console in live, because this console has been decommissioned. So this Intune console, or the, let me just call it Silverlight console, the older console that we are talking about, the Silverlight console. In this, what we could, as I said, the Silverlight console was kept in mind. Was made keeping in mind how Windows 7 PC management was supposed to be done, and in that there is not much that we could manage in the device. So the two things that we could actually do in those two devices was, first of all, patch management and then inventory collection. So over here you can see that there would be something like we have all the software. I mean, there are different tabs for everything, and then we can see there's a separate tab for updates as well. Sorry about that. There's a separate tab for updates as well, and then we can see the list of devices that are enrolled to this tenant at this point of time. But more often than not, this was actually, we had some MDM policies that we could push down to the device. We didn't have something like a MAM without enrollment or something like that. That wasn't there. And more often than not, this was used for getting the patch, getting a report for the patch level and inventory, as in the different devices that we have in the environment, the OS, the operating system version, and the hard disk and whatnot. So we got those information in the portal, but one of the challenges that we had was we first of all could not view everything in the portal itself. So it wouldn't, like, for example, tell you what are the certificates in the device or certificates deployed from Intune in the device. It wouldn't tell you that, which it does now. I'll show you where and how. And we also didn't have the option of exporting all the reports. So some reports could be exported using the Silverlight console, which existed earlier. Some of them could not be. So let's just say that I have to maintain an inventory wherein I need to export all the reports on first of every month. So that was inherently not possible for all the reports that we got from the Silverlight console. And the export was limited to a certain views and often did not contain all the fields that the customer wanted in a single view. And we did not have the ability of importing the data into other tools. So right now we have the option of importing the data to other tools. Like, I'll give you, for example, we'll do a deep dive on this later on. But for example, the first one obviously would be Power BI tool. So right now we have an option of importing the data from our, I wouldn't say Intune console, but it is actually from the Intune data warehouse into the Power BI tool. Or we can use something like PowerShell or Graph Explorer. We can use all these tools. Earlier, this also did not existed. So right now what we can do is, let's just say that the data is there. We are viewing that data in the Intune console, but we don't want to view it in the Intune console or in the Intune portal, but we want to fetch that data in another tool, and that tool has a different kind of filters and different kind of interface which we want to make use of. So this possibility exists now. However, it wasn't there earlier. And then we didn't have the option of sharing the reports from the console and publishing them online. So right now, just like, for example, we have an option of integrating Intune with Power BI. And once that is done, then we have an option of publishing that report online. So what that does is, let's just say there is another user who another admin who wishes to see that report. He won't have to download any application on his device. He can just go to a URL, and going to that URL would give him real-time access to the report that the first admin has published. So this again also did not existed in the Silverlight console. Okay, so these were few of the drawbacks that we had in the Silverlight console. And then one of the way around to this was hybrid deployment. So what happened in the hybrid deployment was, again, this again is decommissioned right now, but I'll still give you guys a 1,000 feet overview of what hybrid deployment was. So in hybrid deployment, what happened was the devices were enrolled to Intune. Let's just say I have an Android or an iOS device. The Android or the iOS devices were enrolled to Intune, and then the Android or the iOS devices got all the policies that were made in Intune down, and they behaved accordingly. However, let's just say that in our environment we have Android iOS device as well as Windows devices, okay? And those Windows devices are being managed by an SCCM admin. Okay, so more often than not, the SCCM admin who took care of managing the Windows devices was the same person who had to take care of managing the Android or the iOS device as well. So now when we brought hybrid into the mixture, what we did was, well, obviously if the SCCM admin now has to manage both the Windows devices as well as the Windows devices from SCCM as well as Android and iOS devices from Intune, then he would have to access both the portals, right? He would have to access the SCCM portal as well as he would have to access the Intune portal, okay, which caused a little bit of confusion. So what we did in case of hybrid deployment was from the SCCM console itself, we made all the policies for Intune. Okay, so we did not, the end user would not, by the end user, I mean the admin, the SCCM admin who is already familiar with the SCCM console would no longer have to go to the Intune portal because obviously Intune came after SCCM, right? So we're assuming that the SCCM admin is familiar with the SCCM console, but not with the Intune console. So the SCCM admin won't have to go to the Intune console and familiarize himself over there. All he could do was he just had to create a policy in the SCCM console that would automatically reflect in the Intune portal, and then it would be deployed to the user or to the device group that the admin wanted to make use of. So what was the advantage of this? I mean, why are we, instead of making a policy directly in the Intune portal, why are we talking about a scenario wherein wherein the admin is making the policy in the SCCM console and then syncing it with Intune, and then from Intune it is coming down to the device? So what is the advantage? The advantage over here is, well, first advantage is obviously if I have a mobile device. So let me just draw a not so neat diagram like they always have been. So let's just say that this is SCCM and let's just say that this is the Intune console, okay? And let's just say this is the mobile device. So obviously, if you have guessed it right, this demarcation is actually showing that this is internet and this is intranet. So intranet. So SCCM obviously is in the intranet and the Intune console and the mobile device is in the internet. Okay. So obviously the mobile device cannot directly talk with the Intune service, right? Unless we have something like a CMG in picture, which at this point of time, I'm assuming that we don't. Okay. So the only way a policy can come down to the mobile device is if the admin makes a policy over here in the Intune console. Because the Intune console is there on the internet, so any policy that we make in the Intune console will come down to the mobile device. So, but then if it is the same person who is taking care of SCCM as well as who is taking care of Intune, then he would have to manage both the portals, right? He will have to manage the SCCM portal as well as the Intune portal, which was kind of a pain in the neck. Therefore, what we did was we came up with a option called a hybrid deployment, wherein the SCCM console knew which Intune console it has to talk with. So the SCCM was, in a way, if you would call it, connected with the Intune portal. And then in the SCCM console, we made a policy P1. Okay. That policy was synced to the Intune console. So that policy came down over here as well as P1. And then that policy from Intune came down to the device. So it came down over here as P1. Obviously, from SCCM, the policy cannot directly come down to the Intune service because we did not have something like an CMG in place for this kind of deployment. So this was the hybrid deployment. And the advantage of, so again, we have, let's just talk about the advantage of this kind of deployment. Well, the first advantage was there was a single pane of administration. So now the admin is only managing the SCCM console, wherein he is making the policies for SCCM as well as the policies for Intune, which is syncing down to the Intune console. So the admin no longer has to access both the portals. He just has to access one portal. This is ease of administration, if you would call it. The second advantage was, since we were making the policies in the SCCM console, so we could run all the queries that we normally make in case of SCCM, and then get a list of all the policies and all the inventories and everything that is being managed by the SCCM console. So I mean, the reporting was a little better So earlier, if we compare this with the Silverlight console, or if we compare this with this setup, then in this setup, all we got was the status of the inventory and the patch management. However, now since the devices and the policies, everything is showing up over here as well. So now we can run the SCCM queries like we would normally in case of SCCM standalone, and then we can get a whole better report in this case. However, it had some disadvantages as well. So, well, the advantage was obviously we gained access to the SQL reporting services, and then we could run our SQL queries. Once we could run the SQL queries, we could get a lot more information than what we were getting from the Silverlight console, which was just related to the patch management and the inventory. However, the disadvantage was it tied the customer to hybrid mode. Okay, so this kind of deployment that we are talking about is referred to as hybrid. Okay, so a major attribute of this kind of setup was, let's just say you have a Intune tenant. When you're setting it up for the very first time, you have to select what is the MDM authority of that tenant. What that means is who is managing the tenant, who is the managing authority of your MDM tenant. And in case of Intune standalone, obviously it is Intune. However, in this case, in case of hybrid, the MDM authority of the tenant was SCCM. Okay, because we are making the policies eventually all in SCCM, right? We're not making any policies in Intune, but because that defeats the purpose. The purpose here is having one console that is in SCCM, which can be used to make all the policies. SCCM being the older console, therefore we assumed that therefore we assume that the admins will be more familiarized and more comfortable with the SCCM console. So in case of hybrid, since the policies were being made in the SCCM console, therefore the MDM authority was set to SCCM. So this was one of the disadvantages of the hybrid deployment. That is, the MDM authority of the tenant had to be set to SCCM and not to Intune, which is there in standalone. Okay, again, this is all 2 years back. Now, even if you wanted to do a hybrid deployment, it is not possible. So now this is decommissioned. That a Silverlight console is decommissioned out of support. If you if you get a tenant now, trial or paid, you cannot have access to the Silverlight console. And same goes with a hybrid deployment. If you want to set up a hybrid deployment now, you cannot do it. If you had it earlier, then well, I mean, we had a whole lot of migration activity and everything that went on, wherein all the tenants which had hybrid deployed, that is, which had their MDM authorities set to SCCM, they all were migrated to Intune standalone. Okay, so this again no longer exists. However, I just wanted to let you know that, well, how it actually was a couple of years back. So now let me just give you guys a screenshot of how the reporting was in case of hybrid. So in case of hybrid, you can see that we can get a list of all the mobile devices and the different operating system, and then we have access to something called a pie chart or a donut chart. And then there are a whole lot of so you could go into the reporting node, and then under reporting node, if you, let's just say you're going into device management, and then you're clicking on count on mobile devices by operating system, it's giving you a chart, right? So you can click on any of these, all mobile device count, or list of devices enrolled per user, list of devices, mobile device client information. So you could click on any of these reports, and then in a graphical or in a very intuitive way, it would give you that information, that how many devices. So let's just say if I were to click on list of devices enrolled per user, then per user basis it would give me that, okay, you have got 10 users, each user has enrolled, I mean, the first 5 have enrolled 1 device each, and the next 5 have enrolled 2 devices each. So it would give us that information in a very intuitive way. So we did not have such reporting in the Silverlight console. However, with the advent of hybrid setup, this reporting existed and we could make use of these kinds of reports. So on the left hand side, you can see that there are so many tabs over here, right? We have hardware, we have endpoint protection, compliance, and all those, right? So all you had to do was you just had to double click on one report and then it would give you that information. So this is what we had in case of hybrid. Again, this was a couple of years back. Now let's just talk about what is new in reporting. So until now, what we have spoken about was the legacy method. And there were two legacy methods. One was the Silverlight console and the second was the hybrid deployment. Now we are going to talk about the modern methods of reporting. This all is decommissioned now. This is the only one that exists now. Okay. So as far as the modern reporting is concerned, there are, well, almost three ways of doing modern reporting. Okay. One, two. Please excuse my handwriting, guys. I wish it would have got better by now. Okay, all right. As far as modern reporting is concerned, there are three various ways of getting a report now. And all these three ways are improved. How are they improved? They are improved because the new reporting framework. So now the framework which is being used by the Intune service to generate the report has changed to a lot of extent, and there are a lot of things that we have inculcated into the framework which is used behind generating the report. So the framework that is there right now can be divided into four broad categories. So there are, and I mean, if you want, you can understand it in this way that the report, there are, I mean, more or less four kinds of reports that you can get from Intune, if you would call it that way. You can get an operational kind of report. You can get an organizational kind of report. You can get an historical kind of report, and you can get a specialist kind of report. So, I mean, this is how I would be explaining it. So an operational kind of report is something that would basically be used by an Intune admin or a help desk admin. So it tells you, so let's just say you get a report for all the compliant devices or the non-compliant devices in your organization. And then or you get a report which shows you how many devices in the organization do not have a compliance policy assigned to it. Okay, so that would be something like a operational report which you get from time to time, and basis on the output of that report, the admin takes some action. Okay, so this is more often than not what a help desk admin would do. Okay, organizational report again is 1,000 feet overview of the tenant. So let's just say that what kind of policies do we have, what kind of policies we don't have, and how often the enrollment fails, or how often in iOS devices, how often iOS devices are facing challenges while enrollment, or something like a trend, or something like a not historical, something like a trend that would help a manager understand how his tenant and how his organization is doing. So that would be something like an organizational kind of a report. And then again, a historical report would be something which would show you trends, and it would show you what happened in the past 2 months or 60 days, and what are the different actions that were taken at the portal end by any admin. uh, may that be, let's just say, device sync was run by an admin in the portal, or device was deleted, or policy was deleted, or policy was modified. All that would come under historical. And then finally we had something called specialist. We have something called specialist, wherein let's just say that I'm a person who wants I'm doing some R&D in my tenant and I want a specific kind of information. So the specialist option provided us the option of customizing a report, that this is what I wanted, just like you would do in case of a PowerShell, right? So let's just say you do get hyphen into managed devices, or get managed devices, and then you use something like a select object, right? Select object parameter, and then you only want an option wherein the the PowerShell console should display a specific parameter of the device, right? So you're doing customization. So that is more or less what the specialist tab is talking about. So what I'm saying is, in the modern management, when the modern management came in, like the Intune Ibiza console came in, we changed the reporting in the Ibiza console. And when we changed the reporting in the Ibiza console, we decided that, okay, if anybody wants a report from Intune, it would be one of these kinds of report. Okay, it would either be an operational or organizational or historical or specialist. Okay, and well, the use cases of all of these are different. So, well, we have already spoken about this. Operational report provides timely targeted data that helps you focus. I know this is theoretical, but my intent is for us to know that what changed, and then we will take a look over each of these reports and we'll make sure that, okay, now when we are getting this report, whether it's containing the data that we want it to contain or not. Okay. All right. So operational report contains timely targeted data, organizational report, broader summary of an overall view, such as device management state. Managers would mostly be using it. Historical, it contains the trends over a period of time, how many devices are getting enrolled in a month, and how much of failure are we seeing and whatnot. And specialist is for customization. Okay. Um, and So in the modern reporting, we changed the framework, and this is the newer framework on which the modern reporting is based. And in modern reporting, we have a lot more functionalities as well. So the first functionality which you'll always see is export. So I think more or less any report that you can see in the Intune portal, you'll have the option of exporting it. Okay. At the top of my mind, I cannot think of any report which we see at the portal, but we don't have the option of exporting. There might be a couple, but more often than not, all the reports that we are seeing can be exported. Excuse me. And then we have something called other functionalities performance. So now we can quickly generate a report from large tenants, and it is like very fast. So let's just say you want to get report using PowerShell or Graph API. So it's not like it will take a lot of time to generate all the data from your tenant. It is fairly very quick. Again, it would depend upon the number of devices, and it would depend upon the size of the organization, but then the performance has also been improved to a great extent. And then data paging. So now we can scan our data based on paging, either by page or jumping to a specific page. So let's just say that there are 4 pages of data, so we can either go to a specific page, or we can do it page by page like we normally do. And then search and sort. So now we have an option of sorting each column, and then I mean, like we normally would, right? If we have a data set in Excel, we have an option of exporting the data set and then applying filters, and then you can make use of something like VLOOKUP, or I mean, you can make use of the inbuilt filters that you have in Excel. So you can, even if you're not exporting it to an Excel, from the portal itself, we can apply filters that, you know what, show me all the devices in the tenant, but just show me the UPNs of the users who have enrolled the devices. Don't show me anything else. Don't show me when it was enrolled, when was the last time it synced in, who enrolled it. Don't show me all of that. So we can, just like in case of Excel filters, we have the option of clicking whatever. I mean, we have an option of radio button that we can choose that which attributes should show, which shouldn't show. Similarly, in case of Intune also, so this is a new functionality that we have in the Intune console. As far as reporting is concerned, we can export any report, more or less any report that we can see in the portal. The export is very fast. We can jump to a specific page while exporting the report, and then we can search and sort in the console itself before even exporting the report and get that. I mean, in a way, we are making use of that select object parameter, right? As we would in case of PowerShell. So guys, now let's just take a closer look over the different framework parameters that we were talking about. So the first one amongst them was operational, and in the operational, if I go a couple of slides back, in the operational, we were saying that it is something which a help desk admin might use for troubleshooting purpose, right? So, I mean, let me just show you guys how that would help. So in the Intune portal under the monitor section, we can see a list of non-compliant devices, which shows how many devices are compliant in the portal, how many devices are not compliant, and depending upon and when we click on a specific device, we can see the reason behind the non-compliance of those devices. So like for example, if I'm going into my Microsoft Intune portal, so I'm under Microsoft Intune device compliance, and then over there is under monitor section it says devices without compliance policy assigned. So right now you can see that there are two devices which do not have a compliance policy assigned to them. So I can see a list of so there are two possibilities, right? I can either have devices which do not have compliance policy assigned to them, or I can have devices which have compliance policy assigned to them but are not compliant. So for both of them, we have got different tabs over here. And as I said, for each report that we can see in the portal, we have an option of exporting the report as well. So this is just an example of how a operational reporting would look. So this would come under the operational kind of reporting. Okay, so again, this is for device without compliance policy. It shows up over here. And then organizational, as I said, an organizational kind of reporting would be something like, let's just say if I go into Microsoft Intune, and if I'm just on the device compliance tab, it is showing me a pie chart or a donut chart of the compliant devices that I have, and the recent changes that have been made. And over here you can see the devices which are compliant, and if I had a non-compliant device, it would show up in this donut chart as well. So this doesn't let anybody troubleshoot anything, but let's just say I am an IT manager. I want to see how my tenant, how my organization is doing. So instead of me having to export that report and then going into a tool and generating this pictorial representation, Intune is doing this for us and pre-populating it in the portal itself. This is how this is useful, and this kind of reporting that we are seeing over here is kind of an organizational kind of a report. It is giving us a 1,000 feet overview of the entire organization itself. And then we spoke about a historical kind of a report, which is like kind of trends. So if I go into below device compliance, then we have something called trends, right? And it says that how many devices are compliant, how many devices are not compliant, and then it shows me a time frame as well, that on February 2nd, on February 9th, on February 16th, on February 18th, how many devices were there which were not compliant. So at some point of time I had six devices which were compliant, and at some point of time, let's just say over here on 2nd of Feb, I had only one device that was compliant, and then on 3rd of Feb or 4th of Feb, I had two devices, and then at some point I had 6 or 7 devices. So it depends. I mean, this is just giving me a historical representation as well. So I think I generated this report sometime after 29th March, and it's giving me past 60 days data as well. Okay, and yeah, it gives us a information of past 60 days data. So we retain it for 2 months. And then we have something called specialist, and specialist, it can be used with log analytics. And let's just say I don't want all this thing. I want to generate my own custom report from the portal. That is when we will be making use of this. I'll show later how that can be used. Who can access this? Well, obviously, if you are a global admin who can log into the portal, who can create all the policies, then obviously you can access the report, right? All you're doing is you don't have to do anything out of the box to access the report. All you need to do is you need to go to a specific section in the Intune portal, right? Just like you go to devices to see the devices, now you're going into different section in the Intune portal. So see a list of devices and export it, right? So you don't need any specific privilege to export a report from Intune. other than if you're already a global admin or you're already an Intune admin, right? So global admin or Intune admin can do pretty much everything that has to be done in case of reporting with Intune is concerned. Or administrators who have an Intune role with read permission. So if you have read permission, this was talking about RBAC or role based access control. So if you don't want anybody to have access to delete anything, then obviously giving that person a global admin or an Intune service admin will not be a good idea. In that case, you can give the user give that user, dedicated user, a read-only permission, and if he has a read-only permission, he can see everything from the portal, and then he can export the report as well. Sorry. Okay, and now let's just talk about modern reporting. So until now we have spoken about, let me just go back here again. Until now we have spoken about the legacy method, that is Intune console and hybrid deployment. We have spoken about those two. And then we spoke about what is the framework that has changed in the modern reporting. Okay, so now let's just talk about how we can access this modern reporting. Well, one way is obviously the Ibiza console. We were already looking at that, and the other two ways are Graph API and Power BI. So along with Graph API, we can use PowerShell as well. So guys, in the beginning also I told you, in this nugget we are not going to do a deep dive on Graph APIs or PowerShell. I've already done a separate nugget on how Graph APIs can be used, what is the significance, and how PowerShell can be integrated with them. So I would strongly suggest you guys to take a look over that as well. We'll just touch the mere basics. In this one, I want to do a deep dive on Power BI integration, and I want to show you guys how we can use Power BI. Okay, but just so you guys know, for modern reporting we can use Ibiza console, Graph API, or Power BI. Ibiza console is better, so this Ibiza console would be a replacement of the old Silverlight console, and it provides us access to more data as compared to what the Silverlight console provided us access to, and a better management of that data. So you can see that in the portal itself, it is giving us a pictorial representation. It's showing us all the 4 kinds of reports that I spoke about, and it's showing us graphs, it's showing us donut charts, pie charts, historical information, everything. So a better data, more data, and better management of data. Okay, and then we have the ability to view all the devices, policies, apps in a single view. So in one report itself, we can get all the information. We can export pretty much all the report that we are seeing in the portal. And then we have a dedicated report section also, which shows the trend analysis that we already spoke about in the historical section. There are a whole bunch of reports that we can download from the Ibiza console. So these are few of the very commonly used reports. I'm not saying that these are the only reports that we can download, but these are the commonly used ones. So we can get a list. If I go on to Microsoft Intune all devices, and then if I select, and then if I export the list of devices in my tenant, so it will give me a list of managed devices as well as all the information attributed to those devices. So their OS, their model, their IMEI number, their manufacturer serial number, storage, MAC address, jailbroken or not. I mean, it will give us a whole bunch of information when we export that report. And then if we have any compliance policy in place, it will tell us how many devices are compliant, how many devices are not compliant, how many devices in my environment do not have a compliance policy assigned. It will give us a check-in time for each device. So in this report itself, it will tell us how many when was the last time that device checked in. We can also get a report of all the applications. This is now we are this was related to MDM, and now we are talking about the MAM functionality. So this is like MAM functionality, wherein we are getting a list of all the applications that have been deployed via Intune, all the managed applications. So let's just say that I have a device, and in that that device is enrolled by a user, right? Or let's just say it is MAM without enrollment. Okay, so I am a user, I have a device, and in my device I've installed Outlook application. Okay, and the admin has targeted MAM policy to my account. Okay, so the admin can see whether the MAM policy actually took effect on that on my account or not. So in my device, when I log into Outlook, Outlook realizes that okay, there is a MAM policy which needs to be targeted, right? So using that MAM channel, the policy comes down. And once that happens, that application actually registers a check-in in the portal. So we can also see for managed application, when was the last time the device checked in for that policy. We can get, and I'll show this. This is an important one. And then we can see all the app installation status, app protection status, app licenses, and then again back to MDM, we can see the device configuration profile. Just like any profile, device compliance profile also, just like that. In case of device configuration profile, we can see when was the configuration profile deployed, what is the status. So let's just say I've deployed a device configuration profile saying the device should have a 4-character password. So once it is succeeded, we can see that whether that policy came down to the device or not, just like a normal device configuration policy would. So we can get a report which would show all the device configuration profile deployed to all the devices, and then all the certificates that are issued to the devices as well via Intune. So this last parameter is something which we did not have, I think, couple of years back, but I think sometime from 2019, I have started seeing that that tab is also there, which shows us the certificates that have been deployed to the device from Intune. May that be a SCEP cert or PKCS cert or whatever. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. So let me just give you guys a walkthrough in the portal. So right now we are at the Microsoft Intune Blade, and then if I go into all devices, I can export a list of all the devices. By default, it shows us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or whatever columns are there. But if I don't want all the columns, if I want to customize it, then I can just click on any radio button. And right now, for example, you can see in the portal it's not displaying the IMEI number, right? But if I click on IMEI, if I just check this, then and apply, and then hit apply, then in the portal itself it will have a column for the IMEI number. Okay, and then we have an option of exporting the reports as well. Yeah, over here we have an option of clicking on export all. If I click on export all, the report is going to come down, and then we can apply the filters from the Excel as well. Okay, now if we are at the overview tab, then it, instead of, I mean, just like we were seeing in a couple of slides back, it was showing us a pictorial representation. Over here also it's giving us a 1,000 feet overview. What is the MDM authority? This is Microsoft Intune. This is what I was talking about when I was talking about hybrid, and the tenant name, the tenant location, the account is active. It's just giving us a status of the device configuration profile, because right now we're at the device configuration tab, that how many users. If I click on any of these, it will tell us more information, but right now it says that devices with errors, profile deployment status. So I mean, it's giving us a 1,000 feet overview of how our tenant is doing, and anything that the admin needs to keep in mind. Over here in the assignment state, it is showing us that how many devices. So let's just say that we are under device configuration assignment state, right? So it is showing that I have got these many device configuration profile in my tenant. These are the types, and if there are any errors, it will show us over here. So I've got one over here, one as error over here, and then if there are any conflicts, it will show. If there are any succeeds, if there are any success, it will show over here. If it's not applicable, it will show over here. So this again is showing us an assignment state for all the devices, device configuration profiles that has been pushed down to the portal, pushed down from the portal to the devices. And this, as I said, for certificates, this has been recently introduced. So for all the PKCS or for SCEP certificate that have been deployed down to the device, so over here you can see the serial number of the certificates as well. The issuer obviously is my on-prem CA. It tells us the date, the device name, the username, the thumbprint, everything. And then we have specific logs for device actions as well. So over here, if I go into Microsoft Intune and then I'm at the device actions blade, and over here you can see all the action log for all the action that has been taken by an Intune admin from the portal. So over here you can see that every time a device retire, device wipe, device restart, even if a device sync is done from the portal by an admin, it will tell you that for which device it was done, the device name, the device ID, the status, which admin did it, and the date and the time. Okay, and again, this is something that can be exported. All right, so this is a tab for all the device actions that is being done by an admin. And then we have something called a MAM report. So over here you can see that we have something called app protection status, right? So if you click on that, then there are a couple of reports that we can export. App protection, this is a MAM report for Android, iOS. This is the report for WIP. This is an app protection report for with enrollment, without enrollment. We have both. And then we have got app configuration report, which we can download. And then over here, it's giving us a donut chart representation, or I mean, not an operation. Again, this would not be an operational kind of a report. This would be an operational kind of report, but this is something that is giving you a 1,000 feet overview of how many devices are there and what is the status for MAM, with enrollment, without enrollment, depending on the operating system. So we have a separate chart for iOS, separate chart for Android, separate chart for Windows, and whatnot. All right. And if we open up any of such report, if I open up one of that report, an app protection report, it gives us a very verbose information. So we'll do this in the demo, but I just want to give you guys a heads up on what is coming. So over here, I can see the application version. I have removed some of the columns as well. It will tell you the application name, the device type, the device model, the device ID, the Azure AD device ID, the Intune device ID, platform, whether app protection status is protected or not, policies applied or not, and a lot of other parameters. So every time a device checks in, may that be with enrollment, may that be without enrollment, if a device checks in for MAM, then we'll be able to see the check-in over here. Okay. So that is all there is there. I mean, we can do from the portal level. A little limited as far as the automation is concerned, but then again a lot more verbose as compared to what we had in case of Silverlight portal or in case of hybrid setup. Okay. And then the next way of reporting in Intune in the modern world is using something called a graph API. And then we can reference these graph APIs in a tool called Graph Explorer or in PowerShell. Again, just a reiteration, I've done a separate nugget on this, on how to do this integration and then how this helps in automation. I would definitely suggest you guys to check that out. But again, just an overview, Graph API can also be used. It is a bit more advanced and it helps us in getting more data in a customized and an automated reporting manner. Provides us full access to the Intune backend, Intune data, and the customers can connect and pull data in various ways or methods. Customer can access the data in real time. So it is not like it will give you historical information. It gives you a real-time information of what's going on right now. And then we need to leverage tools like Graph Explorer or PowerShell, using which we can make this Graph API or this RESTful API calls. Again, to set that up, you need to have some permissions and then the license and then the tool. You don't need to install any software. The link to that is aka.ms/ge. And then from there also you can, so just like from the portal, you were able to get a report. Similarly, from Graph Explorer also, you can get a report. This report is showing us all the list of users in my environment. So again, there is a lot of things that can be done over here, a lot of customization, a lot of filtering that can be done. I won't go into the very detail of how this can be done. So just for you to know. So, but there is one thing that we need to know when we are talking about Graph Explorer, and that is, sorry, and that is whenever we are going to any blade in the Intune portal. So let me just go back over here, go back to the Intune portal. And these are the different blades or different tabs in the Intune portal, right? So whenever we are clicking on any tab in the Intune portal, at the background, it actually makes a Graph API call. Okay. So what happens is the flow is something like this. We are clicking on a specific tab in the portal. The portal or the UI is doing a Graph API call for us. It is going to the Intune database, Intune service database, fetching the information that it needs to fetch, and then displaying us the output in the portal. The other way of getting the same information is, instead of making the portal do the REST API call or Graph API call, we can make that call ourselves. But for that, the only thing that we need to know is the correct syntax of making that call, the correct parameter that needs to be put in while making that call. As long as that is there, then we can make use of the REST API calls and then get the data that we want to. So over here it is showing us like, so this endpoint, or this is the API call, and this is equivalent to going into Microsoft Intune and then all devices. So what happens, guys, when you go to Microsoft Intune and then all devices blade or tab in the portal? It gives you a list of all the managed devices in the environment, right? This is exactly what this API call is also doing. So when we are doing it from the portal, it is actually referencing this API call. How I find that out, we are not going to discuss that. Just know that we can find that out taking a F12 trace or something like that. And then once that is done, if we know this endpoint, then we can get the same output as well. So let me just show you guys, just for the sake of it. We can go to Google Chrome, and then let's just say I am going into uh, everything about Intune.com. And then this is a blog site that I have. This is again not an Microsoft official blog site, but then again, I have written a blog on, let's just say, using Graph Explorer with Intune, or integrating Intune APIs with Windows PowerShell. So over here, I have actually explained that what Graph Explorer is and how that can be used, what an API is, and how we make these calls. So the calls that we were making, right, it was something in this format, right? So if I go back to the slide over here, you can see it says at graphs.microsoft.com v1 device management and then manage devices. What exactly is this? How we came up with this? And as I said, that we can find out this endpoint using a F12 trace from a browser, right? So how to take that F12 trace? This is how we take the F12 trace from the browser. And I've explained that in the blog, and then I have also explained how we can integrate Intune with with PowerShell. So for that, we need to install the Azure AD module, the PowerShell module, and then we can get a whole bunch of reporting as well. So I'd suggest you guys just check this out, everything about Intune.com. It might answer some of your queries. So that's why the reason I brought it up is I didn't want you guys to, I don't want to discuss in detail what Graph Explorer is, because that has already been addressed. And then again, we can do, so as I said, guys, let's just say that there is an Intune database. So let me just explain it in this way. Let's just say that this is the Intune database. Okay, this database can be accessed using the portal. That is the first way. This database can be accessed using the REST API calls. Okay, let me just call this API calls. Now the REST API calls can be made via two ways. It can be either made via Graph Explorer, or it can be made via PowerShell. So right now we were talking about how we can make the REST API calls. We're making a REST API call over here using PowerShell, using Graph Explorer. But then again, we can also make this using PowerShell. And if you're making it using PowerShell, we get the same output, because the data is the same, right? Over here, whichever way we are using, we are referencing the same data, right? So irrespective of how we do it, we can get the same information from PowerShell as well. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the first half of the topic, that was reporting via Intune using the legacy methods and the modern methods. And now what I want to talk about is PowerShell, not PowerShell, sorry, Power BI and Intune data warehouse. So now we are going to talk about what data warehouse is, why do we need it, and how exactly does this help us with reporting, and what has this got to do with Power BI app. Okay. So the Intune product group decided to create the Intune data warehouse. So Intune data warehouse, you can say, is, you can think of it like, so I'm just trying to give you guys an analogy. So you can think of Intune data warehouse as a location, and that Intune data warehouse can be accessed via any third-party tools. So there is many third-party tools, one of them being Power BI. There are other tools as well. so which we'll talk about later. So we are referencing the Intune data warehouse using a third-party tool. We are getting the output that we need to get from the Intune service, and then the third-party tool is actually displaying it out for us in a pretty format or in a format that we would like it to display. So data warehouse has APIs exposed, and the data warehouse APIs lets us access the Intune data in a machine readable format using many analytical tools. One of those analytical tools obviously is Power BI. And the data warehouse API actually uses the OData protocol or the Open Data Protocol, which is version 4.0. And it is actually, and what is Open Data Protocol? Open Data Protocol is actually a standard that defines the best practices for building and consuming RESTful APIs. So as I said, that Intune data warehouse can be accessed using the OData protocol, and there are many tools to access it. One of them being Power BI. There are other tools as well like Postman, but we are going to primarily talk about how to access the Intune data warehouse using Power BI for now. Okay, so Power BI, again, it's a Microsoft tool, and we can use it outside Intune as well. But with Intune, we can integrate. So with Intune, it can be integrated so that it gets the information from our Intune data warehouse and it displays the information in a way we want it to. What are the advantages of the Power BI application? It gives us the historical data of almost 90 days. And then we have an option of creating our own customized report. So from the portal, we were getting a specific set of reports, right? And then we could add filters, remove filters. Over here, we can build our own report, add the columns that we want, establish relationship between two columns, just like we normally do in case of Power BI. We can see the trends and analysis and graphs and tables and relationships. It is way more pictorial, and we can optimize the license purchasing because we can see from the charts and from the figures what is the usage, what is being used, what is not being used. We can see the app installation attempts, we can see the app usage, app failures, breakdowns, device enrollment summaries, device enrollment inventory. So anything and everything related to, I won't say everything, but a lot of things that we could not do from the portal itself once integrated with. So the power of Power BI is what we are utilizing right now, right? So we are using Power BI, and it is letting us make use of everything that we can do using Power BI, and making us enabling us to get the report the way we want it to. So we will create a custom report when we are into the demo section, but this is what a Power BI report would look at. So over here, you can see that it's telling us the enrollment trends, as in there are different tabs over here: enrollment and app protection policy, compliance policy, device configuration, device inventory logs, and then we can select the operating system from here as well. So if I select a specific operating system, that only that information will show up. If I want all of them, so over here this is showing for Android as well as an iOS, which is color coded. It is showing us the enrollment trend. This is the level of granularity that we are getting from Power BI. We can see the enrollment trend, but not only general for our tenant, but operating system wise as well. And there is a lot more that we can do. I'll show you guys what is the level of granularity that we can do, that we can get using Power BI integration with Intune. But before we do that, let's just talk about how we integrate Intune with Power BI. One of the main things that I wanted to discuss in this session. So this is how it works. Every tenant is just like a domain, right? Just like we had something like an on-prem domain, we have something like a tenant in the Azure. So every tenant has its own Intune data warehouse, and each Intune data warehouse has a URL, or if you would call link. So what we do, we go to our tenant, we fetch our URL or we fetch our link from there, and then we provide it as an input or a source to the Power BI application. Now Power BI reads that URL and via the URL it fetches all the information from our tenant, and then we can customize our Power BI application, add filters, remove filters, and see whatever data we want to see. So over here it says that Intune portal, we can go to the Intune portal, and then when we go into the Intune portal, we can grab hold of our Intune data warehouse URL. It looks something like this, wherein this MSU, this is our MSU or our scale unit, wherein which signifies where exactly our tenant is residing. We just need to copy this, and then we just need to provide it to our Power BI application. So just when we launch our Power, so it's something like this. Let's just say that this is our Power BI app. So this Power BI app can receive input from various format. It can receive input as text file. It can receive input as CSV. And when it receives those input, Power BI processes that, and then it gives us an output. So it can give us an output in a very pretty format. It can give us an output in, let's just say, as a pictorial representation in form of a donut chart or in form of a graph or something like that. Right. So right now what we are doing is, instead of providing it input via a text file or a CSV, we are providing it input from our Intune data warehouse URL. So Power BI application is going to process that, and then it's going to give us the output, and it gives us the ability of providing and putting in filters as well. So the way it needs to be done is, we need to log into Power BI application. Once we are logged in, we need to be logged in as admin, and that admin needs to have a Power BI license assigned to him. It's a free license. Then we need to go into get data, which signifies this process that we are providing data to the Power BI app. And over here you can see we have the ability of providing data from a text file or from an Excel. We are not going to do that. We are going to click on O data feed. Once we click on O data feed, it's going to ask us for the URL, and this is wherein we provide the data warehouse URL for our tenant. Each tenant is going to have its own Intune data warehouse URL. We provide that, we click on OK, and then it loads all the tables from our tenants. So I mean, it's just like a database. So just let's just say that our Intune tenant has its database, right? So at the back end, the database is stored in form of tables, right? So over here it is displaying all the tables, and then it's asking us whether you want to load all the tables or whether you want to load a specific table. We can either click on all the tables that are there at the display and then click on load, which would mean that Power BI application, this is a Power BI app using the Intune data warehouse URL, it would load all the data from our tenant. But let's just say that I don't want Power BI app to load all the data, because I don't want all the data. I just want the data related to MAM. Then I can just run a search for MAM over here, and then I can select MAM in the filters and then click on load. What that would do is that would load all the data in the MAM columns in the data from the database. Okay, it gives us a preview over here. Usually the way I do it is I load everything. It takes longer, it takes a tad bit longer, but then I know that, okay, I can just, if I'm not sure that the data which I'm looking for would be in which column or would be in which table, then I usually more often than not load all the tables. So this is how you load the table. Once you click on load, then if you are not clicking on load, before clicking on load, you have an option of clicking edit over here, and you can remove a specific column if you want to. This again is just for customization. It's an optional step. If you want, you can just ignore this and then just click on load. Once you click on load over here, it's going to load all the columns in front of you. And once those columns are loaded, on the right hand side, you can see in the fields that they have been loaded. Okay. So once they are loaded, then we have the option of deciding how it is going to be displayed. So let me just go back over here. So data warehouse URL is something that we provided. Power BI application got it, and now it's going to display it. we have the option of deciding how it is going to display, and that is under the visualization tab. So over here you can see that there are a whole bunch of options. One of them is pie chart, one of them is donut chart, one of them is table, one of them is in from a graph via x-axis, y-axis, one of them is a slicer, one of them, I mean, there are a whole bunch of options depending upon which one we need. We can use it, and then we can mix and match. So we can create, we can I mean, we have the option of having a donut chart as well as, I mean, we can create as many visualizations as we want. It is entirely up to us. And then we have the option of putting in filters as well. So over here, I mean, this is, I mean, I'm not going to go into the very details of how this is supposed to be done, because that is something that I actually want to display during the demo part itself. But over here we have the option of selecting what is going to be in the x-axis, what is going to be in the y-axis, and then which visualization we want to choose. And we have the option of establishing relationships as well. So over here you can see that, I mean, I believe it's giving us the count of user by application, by year and application name. And over here it is using this format in the visualization. So, and it has loaded these three tables from the database. It has used these three tables. So whichever tables we use, it becomes in this yellow format. So we have a whole bunch of customization that we can do. Please stay put, because I'm going to display this, display all of this, how we can get this done in the demo part. So over here, this is just a representation of one of the reports that I got, I mean, I got online and I later on created as well. So this is showing us a list of all the devices that we have in the tenant, and then it is giving us a drill down of the kind of devices as well. So it's telling us the make and model of each device which we have in the tenant. We have got so many Google Pixels in the tenant. Now, if I click on this, it would, so there is something called enabling a drill down, which again I will show later on. So enabling drill down, what it does is, let's just say this is the first chart that comes up. Now it shows that there are so many Nexus 5X devices in the environment. Now, if I double click on this portion, then it tells me the name of those devices. If I double click again, it will tell me which device was enrolled by which user. So that is what a drill down is. Again, I will I will show it to you. So this is one of the reports that I created. So this report is actually telling me the list of devices in my environment. So the blue signifies the Android devices, this is the iOS device, and this is the Windows device. And it is telling me the device count as well as the device percentage. Okay, so now let's just say that I, as an admin, know that how is my infrastructure looking like and what is the percentage of devices depending upon the operating system. Now, if I double click on this, if I double click on the Windows part, then it tells me that out of those Windows devices, how many devices are compliant and how many devices are non-compliant. So it tells me that 51% of the devices are compliant and 48% of the devices are non-compliant amongst the 29 Android devices that I have in my environment. Now, if I double click on any of them, let's just say I double click on this. So this is what a drill down is. If I double click on this, then it tells me which devices are compliant and which devices are not compliant. So if I just double click, I just double clicked on, let's just say, either one of these. So now it's giving me a pictorial representation wherein it's telling me all the device names which are compliant and then all the device names that are not compliant. Now I can create more drill downs if I want to, or I mean, it's up to us. So this is what a drill down is, and this is the level of granularity that we can get. And this is, I mean, this is the power of Power BI, as I said. I mean, it brings to the picture the great value of visualization. Now, we could have exported a similar report from the portal as well, but it wouldn't be as neat and as seamless as this, as what we are getting, as simple as this. I mean, it's giving us a pictorial representation, it's enabling us to do a drill down, and then depending upon which data we want, we can enable drill down and customize our reporting accordingly. So I'll show you, or I'll show you guys that how we can make this, and it doesn't take a lot of time. As far as snapshot is concerned, the Intune data warehouse snapshot is taken every night at midnight UTC, and that the Intune data. So what this means is, so Intune has a database, and that database is snapshot is taken, and then it is kept in the data warehouse. Okay, that this is the reason why using Intune data warehouse we can get data up to 2 months back, right, up to 60 days back, because that snapshot is kept in the Intune data warehouse for almost 60 days. And then okay, and then let's just talk about publishing a Power BI report. So let's just say that I created this Power BI report. I created this pictorial representation, and now I want to publish it so that someone else who is not an Intune admin can take a look over this as well. So the way that works is, once the report has been created, we have an option of creating publish over here. We just need to click on publish, and then we have to create a workspace. We have to name our workspace, and then we just have to publish the report in that workspace. And then we have an option of creating something like a dashboard, which what that would mean is, every time, so we don't necessarily need the Power BI desktop app in our laptop or in our device. We can just go to the Power BI online URL, and from there we can see any report that was previously published. Okay, this says how Power BI report can be published. It needs to have a Power BI Pro license assigned to it, and that's all. So guys, that's it. I know it has been a lot of theoretical part, and reporting is something which is best explained practically. So what we are going to do now is, let's just quickly move into the practical part, wherein first I'm going to show you guys how to get all the kinds of report from either going into portal.azure.com or Endpoint Manager, and we are going to see all the kinds of report that we can get, what is the data that we can get, play a little bit with the filters, and I'll show you guys all the 4 kinds of reports that we can get. I mean, depending upon the let me just show you guys. Yes, these 4 I'm talking about, all the 4 kind of report depending upon the new framework that we have. And then we are going to install a Power BI application in our device, and then we are going to integrate it with Intune, and then we are going to see how to get this work and how to make these pretty reports. All right, then let's just get started with the demo. Okay guys, so now I am at my portal, and I am at the overview tab in the portal. So we are going to go through all the tabs in the portal and the relevant reporting that we can possibly see. So when I log into, so right now I'm at portal.azure.com. I went there, I searched for Intune, and this is my landing page. And you can see that when I come on my landing page, I can see a little bit of information. This is also related to reporting. It tells me the device assignment failures. It tells me the device assignment errors, and then top app installation failures, depending upon the platform. So there are a couple of apps which are deployed which have failed in my organization deployment. So you can see it has Adobe Acrobat Reader, Converter, and let's just say that you have deployed Win32 app to your organization, a bunch of Win32 app or LOB application to your organization, and then a lot of them are failing. So just when you log into the portal, this gives you a intuitive experience, and this tells you that, okay, out of all the apps that you've deployed, these are the ones that are failing, these are the ones that need your attention. Okay, that is what we see in the overview tab. Now let me just quickly go through all of these tabs, and I'll show you guys that what information is where. So in the landing page itself, you see there is something called audit logs, and again this is related to reporting. So when I click on audit logs, it tells me that whatever so this is going to log every activity that has been made by an Intune admin from the portal. Okay, so all these logs, you can see it tells you the initiated by the username, and then it tells me the activity. So I ran a sync of the device. So as many times I ran a sync of the device, it tells me that a sync was run, and along with the timestamp, I updated the assignment device compliance policy, and then I deleted a device compliance policy, and then I made an assignment. It tells me the target activity, the name of the application, and whatnot. So let me see if I click on any of that. Yeah, if I click on any of that, it gives me the application ID, the application name, and it gives me more information. So this is something like for auditing. Let's just say that, I mean, very often we see that, I mean, there are multiple admins in the organization, right? Tomorrow you come to the office, you log in, and you see that, you know what, an application which was deployed earlier is now missing, resulting into an outage. So how do you identify how that went missing, whether it is something at the back end, or whether it is a mal configuration or a misconfiguration which was made? Somebody would have come and deleted a policy or made any change. This is wherein that is going to be logged. And as you can see now, we have an option of exporting the report as well. So every report that we can see, we have an option of exporting it as well. And then if you can go into columns, there is an option of adding columns as well. So over here, you can see that all these activities that were made, all of them are successful. Okay. All right. So now let me just start with the device enrollment tab. If I go into device enrollment tab, it gives me the information. By default, we come into the overview, and it is telling me the tenant location. It is in Asia Pacific, and my account status is active, and the MDM authority is Intune plus 0365. Okay. And then it tells me okay, if I click on enrollment status, it is going to tell me in a pictorial way. If I click on alerts, if there are any alerts, if there is a device without profile, if I click on that, probably it should tell me the name of the device which does not have any profile attached to it. And obviously it is talking about Windows autopilot devices only. Let's just say that I uploaded any hardware hash of an autopilot device, and I did not assign any profile to that autopilot device. So it is going to come up over here in this section which says that device without any profiles. Okay. And the one that we are under manage is something that an admin would be doing. It's an administrative task. But for reporting, what we are specifically concerned on right now is the monitor section. So if I go into autopilot deployments preview, it tells me that if I made any autopilot deployment, then what kind of autopilot deployment I made, when did I make it, whether it was user driven, whether it was self deploying, the serial number and the user and the autopilot profile name, whether it was successful, how much of time it took for the admin to make the deployment from the portal. Then we have something called an enrollment failures as well. So when we go into the enrollment failures, we have the option of selecting a user. So if I select a user from here, I can just click over here and then select a user. And then if I select a user, it will tell me all the enrollment failures that has happened for this user. Okay, make sure you edit those and then just and then we have something called incomplete user enrollment. So I mean, if any enrollment was incomplete, or I mean, this is going to give you a 1,000 feet overview of what is the enrollment status in the organization. Are the enrollments failing? If that is the case, then probably we might have to do a deep dive and find out, is there something wrong with the authentication? Is there something wrong with the network? But yeah, this gives you a 1,000 feet overview of how your organization is doing. So over here, you can see that at 7 a.m. what happened, at 8 a.m. what happened for each day. You can see that this information is there. And then if I don't think I have the option of clicking anywhere, but yes, this is just a timeline, if you would call it. And then we have an option of exporting the report as well. So let me see what happens if I export one of the report. So I just exported the incomplete user enrollment. Let me see what data is there. So it also tells us the event date, the enrollment result, which says that abandonment, maybe the user tried to enroll it and then maybe clicked on cancel, maybe the enrollment did not go all the way through, maybe there was a network problem, whatever. And then it failed at the pre-abandonment reason is pre-enrollment wizard, and then abandonment type is setup checklist, and then what was the operating system of the device, what was the OS of the device, and what was the UPN that was used, to whom the enrollment failed. So it's like it's very good information, right? It's telling you when the enrollment failed, how the enrollment failed, in which OS, in which device, for which user the enrollment failed. So very useful information, right? All right. Users may not complete enrollment wizard by selecting decline all, cancel, postpone, or similar actions that ends the wizard. Takes more than 30 minutes to complete the action. Okay, this is what we need to keep in mind. So 13 devices have initiated the enrollment, 3 led to incomplete enrollments. Incomplete enrollment rate is 23%. So very good information, I would say. All right, let me just go back. So that was device enrollment. So all the reporting that was related to device enrollment is what we got from there. Now let me just come to device compliance. And then again, what I would like you guys to see is the monitor tab. Before we do that, let's just see over here, which tells me devices without any compliance policy. We have got 29 devices which do not have any compliance policy or whose compliance policy is in errored state. Okay, again, this is a very good information. If I am an Intune admin, and if when I log into the portal itself, in the first page itself, if I get an information which says that, you know what, out of the 10,000 devices in your environment, 5 devices or 15 devices are the ones which do not have any compliance policy assigned to it. That's a very good information, because, well, that is for I mean, that is a cleanup that I would want to do as an admin. I would want to make sure that all the devices in my environment are compliant, right? So, all right. So it gives us that information, the basic page itself, and then the kind of compliance policy that I have assigned, the compliant devices, non-compliant devices. If I scroll down, it tells me the kind. It gives me more information related to a compliance policy that has been set. Now, if I click over here, non-compliant devices, again, it tells me the active non-compliant devices that I have in my environment. It tells me the device name, the primary UPN, the compliance state. It can be not evaluated or not compliant. So let's just say I'm enrolling a device for the very first time. The initial state of the device is not evaluated unless Intune evaluates the device, and once the evaluation is done, then the device is marked as compliant or as not compliant. Okay. And then so it's telling us the compliance state of the device, and then the operating system for each device, the OS version, the ownership type, the last check-in, and the management agent. I think in the columns we can add a whole bunch of other information as well if we want to, and then we have the option of exporting the device list as well. So these are all the devices that are not compliant in my organization. This is something that I would want to take actions on. But how about the devices which do not have a compliance policy assigned to them? So these are the devices which do not have a compliance policy assigned to them. Most of them are showing error right now, so I'm suspecting that these devices do not exist as of this moment. But if the devices existed, then you would ideally see that status is none, meaning that the device is not, I mean, the device was enrolled, but there was no compliance policy which was assigned. This is again one of the action items for the admin. This is a report which the admin would like to look at and then take actions. And then we have something called setting compliance. So for all the devices is active, so enrolled. So by default, I mean, just a little insight, by default we have the option of making compliance policy, but Intune also makes a default compliance policy for all the users, and it just runs basic checks, as in whether the user is active or not, and whether the enrolled user exists or not. So, I mean, it's telling us, I mean, for that parameter, I mean, it is evaluating all the users and all the devices against that parameter. It is saying that all the devices that we have, whether all the users are active in the device or not. So we have got 31 devices and 2 devices which are not. So it's telling us compliant devices against this parameter, compliant devices against this parameter, or non-compliant devices against that parameter. Okay. And if I go into the policy compliance section, and again, we had the option of exporting the report from there as well. So if I go into the policy compliance section, it tells us that we have got 3 compliance policy that are deployed to the devices right now. And both of them, all 3 of them, I believe, are for iOS. And then it tells me that for each of the device, how each of the compliance policy, how many devices are compliant and how many devices are not compliant. Okay. And then we have something called Windows Health Attestation and then Threat Agent as well. This is related to setup, so this is not related to reporting. Again, we have an option of exporting this report as well. And then if I go to device configuration, again, we have I mean, just like we had for device compliance, we have the similar reporting for device configuration as well. When we click on device configuration, it takes us to the dashboard, if you'd call it. And then it's giving us a pictorial representation of all the device compliance policy that has been assigned, how many are in success, how many are in pending. It's giving us a trend as well, as compared to last week, whether it increased, whether it decreased. If I click on any of them, it tells me more information regarding each of it. And then so if I go into the monitor section, just like we had a monitor section for compliance, we have a monitor section for configuration as well. I can go into the assignment status, and then I can see that for all the compliance policy that I have, it tells me the type, tells me how many devices are showing as error, how many are showing as conflict, pending, succeeded, applicable. So I mean, it gives us a holistic information, and then this is something which the admin would like to take a look at to evaluate how his environment and his setup is doing. And then we have something called device with restricted apps, encryption report. This is again something important. So if we have a whole bunch of we did not have this tab earlier. This is a new addition, encryption report and certificate. So if we have a whole bunch of devices in our organization, Windows 10 devices specifically, and the devices are encrypted or not encrypted by BitLocker, this is something that we can take a look at. So the devices are, even if they are encrypted or not encrypted, it tells us the TPM version on those device, and the OS version, the name of the device, encryption readiness. So whether the encryption, it is ready or not to be encrypted. So let's just say that I have a device which has TPM 2.0. So it's telling us that, you know what, you have a device which has a TPM 2.0, its encryption readiness is ready. However, the device is not exactly encrypted right now. How does it evaluate the encryption readiness? I'm assuming that it runs all the prerequisites and the checks which a device must have in order to be encrypted via BitLocker. So I mean, meaning the secure boot should be there, the TPM chip should be there, and for silent encryption and whatnot. So again, this is a very useful information. It's telling us that because we would, as an admin, we would always want that the end device should be encrypted via BitLocker, right? Which we can obviously, which we always have the ability of encrypting via a device configuration profile. This is telling me the readiness, and this is specifically related to the encryption report. Again, this is something that we can export as well and add new columns if we want to. And then we have something called certificates as well. So if we are deploying any certificate from Intune, may that be PKCS or may that be SCEP, so then an entry for that is made over here. and then it tells us that for which device the encryption, for which device the certificate was deployed, the username, the thumbprint of the certificate. So we can even see the thumbprint of the certificate which was deployed to the user. So earlier again this did not exist. The only way for us to find out the thumbprint of a certificate which was deployed via Intune was either checking the company portal logs in the device or going into the on-prem infrastructure and checking the CRP or the and disconnected SVC log, or going into the CA and then checking the list of issued certificates. But now if Intune is delivering any certificate, it logs this information as well: the thumbprint of the certificate, the serial number, the subject name, the issuer. So I mean, it's giving us so much of information from here, which is like really helpful. The certificate expiry, the issuance, the certificate revocation status. So all the information related to certificate is something that we can see over here. Again, very good information which can be exported as well. And then we have something, this is all related to the setup. So let me just go back. Let me just go into devices. If I go into devices, then it is again giving me information of all the devices in my environment. Okay, so it's telling me that we have got 35 devices enrolled in the environment, out of which 15 are Android, 13 are iOS, 7 are Windows. It's giving me a pictorial representation. It's telling me devices with Android management solution. So I have the option of clicking on any of those devices. If I click on Android device, it is going to show me all the Android devices in my environment in sorted order, and then it will show me the other devices as well. Okay, so all right, and then there is nothing, no other monitoring that we have over here. So if I'm deleting any device from here, let's just say I go into all devices, I select a device, and if I delete it, then the initial blade which we showed, this audit log is what it is going to get logged at. And then the other, so this was all related to MDM. Right now we were talking about all the everything related to device, right? So it was all the reporting which was there related to MDM. And then we have something called reporting for MAM as well, which is under the client app section, right? So if I click on client apps, then it takes us to this page wherein we have all the information related to MAM. When I click on there, it tells me top installation failure by devices. These are the applications which are failing to get installed. Adobe Acrobat Reader on iOS, Converter on Windows, and this is an application which is also there on Windows. I'm suspecting that this would actually, yeah, this is a Intune Win files. This is a Win32 app which is failing, probably something wrong with the detection logic or probably the installation command. So I'm not going to go into the very details of what BitLocker is and what Win32 app is. There is again a separate nugget on each of them with the deep dive. But yeah, I mean, it tells us app with installation failure. If I click on that, it tells me all the apps that are being failed for each user, for each device. So again, this is a very good information to have, and which again can be exported as well. Okay. So now let's just go through all the blades. Right now we are at overview. If I go into the apps, this is the list of all the applications which I wouldn't say which are deployed by Intune at this point of time, because we have an option of adding an app and not deploying it as well. These are all the list of applications which we have in our tenant as of now, which can be deployed. Okay, so we all know that if we want to add any application, this is how we do it, right? So I'm not going to add any application, but what I want to show is that this is all the list of applications that we have. It tells us the name of the application and the type, whether it's a Win32 app, a store app, a VPP app, whatever kind of app that we have, and the status as well. We have an option of adding columns, which tells us the developer, the description, date it was created, the store URL, publisher, whole bunch of information, which again can be exported. Okay. And then we have something called a blade for app protection policy. So app protection policy or MAM policy, we're all aware what a MAM policy is, or this would also MAM policy or WIP policy. So it tells us again the name of the policy deployed and all that information. Again, self-explanatory. We have the option of adding columns and then exporting the report as well. Same thing goes for app configuration policy as well. And if we run any app selective wipe, Let's just say that we are doing with or without enrollment, and we are running an app selective wipe, which only flushes out the app related data and nothing else. So in that case, if we are running a wipe, if we are creating a wipe request, then entry would be made over here, which can always be exported. And then we have the monitor section for client apps as well, which tells us about, if I go into the app licenses, it tells us all the licenses that we have for the application. So this is typically useful for a VPP application which has licensing attached to it. And then we have something called discovered apps. So what happens is, let's just say that I have a Windows 10 device. So whenever that device is enrolled, there is a specific class, there is a specific WMI class which the Intune service queries and then discovers the application present in the device. So that discovery is not foolproof. What I mean by that is, let's just say I've got 100 applications in my Windows 10 machine. So Intune might not detect all the 100 applications in the discovered app list, because as I said, Intune service by default queries a specific WMI class only, and all the applications entry that it finds under that WMI class is what it discovers. But again, this is a useful bit of information. We can see the applications that are getting discovered, the version of the application and whatnot. And then we have something called an app installation status. So whatever application we are deploying for the platform, whether it is failing or not. And then we have something called app protection status. This is the important bit. So if we have deployed any MAM policy for any user or WIP policy for any user, this is from wherein we get the pictorial representation and we export the chart. So app protection report for iOS and Android, let me just export this. And then app protection status report for VIP via MDM. Let me just export this. And then let's just take a look over what this has to say. So I'm just opening the first one, and then let's just see what is the information that we have. We have the user. So every user, so let's just say that I have a device, and in that device I have Outlook. Okay. So, and that Outlook is targeted via a MAM policy. So whenever I log into Outlook, the MAM check-in happens, and that is when an entry over here gets created. And it gets created for all the applications which are targeted via MAM policy in my device. So over here, if I just expand this, and if I expand this, you can see that for the first user, there are 5 entries, probably because there are 5 different applications onto which the user is signed in. Where you can see it has got Microsoft Excel, Acrobat Reader, PowerPoint, and Outlook. And then again, the same application for the other users as well. It's telling me the version of the application instance ID, the device name onto which the user was using the application, the device type, the device manufacturer, and then the device model. Let's see, what else do we have? Okay, we have the device model, we have the Android patch version, we have the AAD device ID, and then we have the MDM device ID. So this is the Azure AD device ID, this is the Intune device ID, then the OS, the platform version, the management type, whether it is unmanaged. When it says unmanaged, it means MAM without enrollment. When it says MDM, it means MAM with enrollment. And then the application app protection status status is there, then the policy, whether it is available or not, and then the last sync, and then the compliance state of the device with respect to this policy. So it's a very good bit of information, right? It's telling us that for all the users who have MAM policy targeted, how is the device looking, whether the check-ins are happening or not, and if the MAM is not behaving the way we want it to behave in a specific device, the first thing that we can check is the deployment and whether it checked in actually or not. This is a WIP report, the same. So MAM for Windows is called WIP, or Windows Information Protection. So we have the device ID, we have the device name, we have the state or the applicability, we have the policy ID, we have the name of the WIP policy, and then the user, and then the user principal name, and then the report, and then the compliance of the device with respect to the policy. This would also tell us that whatever is going on with respect to WIP in the device. So we have the option of exporting WIP with enrollment as well as without enrollment as well. So that was under client apps. All right, and now we also have an option of clicking over here which says report. And I am not going to go into the very details of log analytics. Again, this is a very powerful tool which comes under Azure Monitor, and I'll probably do a separate nugget on how to set up the log analytics. Right now, I just want to focus on how and what kind of report we can natively get from the portal and using Power BI. So that's what I want to focus on right now. But very soon there will be a separate nugget on log analytics. So right now, if I go into the reports, if I go into device compliance, it again gives me a pictorial representation: 27 devices which are compliant, 6 are not compliant, 2 are managed by config manager. So probably the compliance workload is set to config manager as well. And then we have a total of 35 devices. I don't have the option of clicking anywhere, but I mean, that is the information that it gives me. And if I click over here, does it give me anything? No, it doesn't. Okay, cool. And then we have an option of Intune data warehouse. So if I click over here, I get the Intune data warehouse link, which I will be talking about later. So right now we were looking at portal.azure.com, but if you guys are aware, the new place for this, or the new home for this, is endpoint.microsoft.com. So if I go to endpoint.microsoft.com, the layout is a little different, but more or less it gives us the same information. So this is the landing page for endpoint.microsoft.com, and then it gives us a little bit more information. It tells me the status of my account, of my tenant, the service status, as well as the connector status. So all the connectors that I have in my environment, so it's referring to the DEP token also as a connector, the VPP token as a connector, and then I mean, I can have a connector. I can have a connector for, let's just say I have a connector for certificate deployment for PKCS. I have a connector for certificate deployment for SCEP. I have a connected deployment for ODJ, that is offline domain join, when we do via autopilot. So all those will be kind of connectors that we have, and if any of those connectors is not syncing in, the polling is not happening, or any of my dep token is not syncing, it will give us an error over here. So again, very useful information to have. All right, so I mean, once we are into the endpoint.microsoft.com, if we go inside, more or less it gives us the same information. So over here, if I click on devices, it gives me the same information which we were getting from the previous portal as well. And then we have the monitor section over here as well, which is giving us the same information. The layout is a little different, but more or less both the, so this is the newer portal, and I would highly suggest everybody making use of endpoint.microsoft.com, because the older portal is something that is going away very soon, right? So if I go, so over here it even gives us a prompt saying that on August 1st 2020 the current Intune Azure portal experience will be retired, and we are moving into Microsoft Endpoint Manager admin portal, which is this endpoint.microsoft.com. So, I mean, the intent of giving you guys a walkthrough over the portal was letting you guys know that what are the different kinds of reports that we can possibly get from the portal, and a little bit of configuration, and stressing on the fact that most of the reports that we can get from the portal can be exported. This is a major difference that we have in the portal right now as compared to what we have in the Silverlight console. Again, I'm just a repetition. I'm not going to go into how we can get these reports from Graph Explorer and PowerShell, because again, there is already a separate nugget on it which talks about very detailed way of how we can do that. So I would highly encourage you guys to go through it. So now, that being said, let's just talk about how to set this up with Power BI. And to set this up with Power BI, as guys we spoke about it in the theoretical part, the first thing that we need is the Intune data warehouse URL. So again, Power BI is an application which needs inputs, and it's going to give us an output in a pictorial or in a pretty format. So that input can be from a CSV file, that input can be from a text file. In our case, that input has to come from our tenant. Therefore, we are going to give the Intune data warehouse URL of our tenant as the input. So I'm going to click on data warehouse, and this is the link of my tenant, the Intune data warehouse URL of my tenant. So every tenant is going to have its own URL depending upon the location and the MSU and whatnot. So I just have to copy it from here. Then I have to install the Power BI application. So it's already installed for me. If it is not, then you just need to go into the store, and Power BI is a free application. You just need to run a search and then search for Power BI, then run a enter, and then Microsoft Power BI desktop. Just click on that, and then you just have to click on get. For me it is already, you necessarily don't have to sign in, you can just do a no thanks. For me it is already installed, so it's giving me an option to launch. It says that product is installed. If it is yeah, it is, I know it's already installed. So if it's not installed, it will start downloading, and then once the installation finishes, it will give us an option to launch. Then we are going to launch it, and what we are going to provide is this Power BI, is this OData feed URL or the Intune data warehouse URL as the input to the Power BI application. One other thing that we need to keep in mind is that the user that we are going to log in with the Power BI into the Power BI application should have a Power BI free license assigned to it. So if I am going into the users and all users, if I go into I think it is this one, and if I go into the licenses, it has a Power BI free license assigned to it, right? So this is what I would need to get started. It just needs, the user needs to be an admin, and assigned roles, let me just check the assigned roles. It's a global administrator, that's what I need. And I'm just going to log into the Power BI application now, and since I have the data warehouse URL, that is all I needed to get started. Okay, so guys, you can see that I have a test1.pbix file. So whenever we are making any visualization or any file in Power BI, we have the option of exporting it and saving it. Just like in Excel, we can save it as a .csv. Similarly, from Power BI, if we are saving a file, its extension is .pbix. So I already created one. So I have the option of double clicking and opening it, or I can just launch the Power BI desktop application. So once I launch the Power BI desktop application, the first thing I have to do is I have to log into it. I'm already logged into it. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is the test1.pbix. So if I click on it, the existing file opens. Let me first show you how it looks and in real time, and then we'll talk about how to integrate Intune with Power BI and make a similar report like this. Okay, so if I click on, let's just say the chart, and if I, let's just say, click on this, the pie chart, I'm sorry, first I'm going to select the existing one. In the existing one, you can see that this is the visualization blade, which determines how the data is going to be displayed. So right now it is displayed in form of bars, right? So this one is selected, stacked column chart. If I don't want bars, if I want a pie chart, I'm going to click on pie chart, and it's going to be displayed in the form of pie chart. So right now what this is displaying is the total number of devices in the environment by device count and OS version. So count of device ID by OS version. So right now we have got, so this light blue is this one. So right now we have got 2 devices which are running with OS version 10. And then again it says blue, again in blue it says, I think it is this one. Again, it has OS version 10. So it can be Windows version 10 or it can be Android version 10, whatever. So let's just say that if I click on any of this, if I double click on any of this, then it is supposed to show me. I'm not sure why it's not working. Let me just delete this, remove. Okay. Drill. Okay, I have to enable drill down. So let me just do this. And which says that click to turn on drill down. Drill down has been enabled. Okay, let's just start again. Let's just say I click on this, and then it tells me that out of the devices that I had in the previous tab. So where did I click? I clicked over here, which says that I have got 15 devices which have a version of, which has version 10. This is talking about the Android version 10 and not Windows version 10. So out of those 15 devices, if I click on it, now it gives me the count that how many of those devices are of which manufacturer. So now it tells me that out of those 15 devices which I have, the light blue is the one which is running, which is Google Pixel, and the dark blue is the one which is running with OnePlus. So now let's just say I click on one of the slide. Now it will tell me that out of the let me just go back once. Out of the Google devices, there can be other device of Google as well, right? So out of those devices, which one of them are Google Pixel? And all the devices that I have from Google are of Google Pixel. And then if I click on any of that, it is actually even telling me that which device has been enrolled, which Google Pixel has been enrolled by which account. So few of them has been enrolled by Akshata K, one of them is test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, right? So this is the count of device ID. So what I'm trying to say is this is the level of granularity that I can achieve. So the default pictorial representation is just showing me the OS of the devices that I have in my environment. If I click on any of that, it just tells me the manufacturer, and if I go deeper, it tells me the version, and then it tells me what is the operating system and whatnot. So let me just, what else can I do? I can just click on any other. Yeah, this is a Motorola one. If I click on that, it tells me there is only one model. If I click on that, it tells me there are 2 users who have enrolled this model. So same goes for all the other versions as well. So right now I've actually put in a filter for Android. So therefore it is only showing me Android devices. If I put in a filter for iOS and Windows, then it tells me all the devices irrespective of the operating system. So let's just say that let's just say I don't want to look into Android and Windows, I just want to look at iOS. Now this is giving me a list of all the iOS devices in my environment. On the left hand side, I've put in one more visualization. Let's just say I want to put in one more visualization. I just have to click on the empty field and add a visualization. Right now I've added 2 visualization. One is this chart which is telling me the display name and the model, and one is the pictorial representation. So all I have to do is enable the drill down, and then let's just say that I have got 14 devices which have an iOS version of 13.3.1. If I click on that, then it tells me all those devices are manufactured by Apple, obviously, because Apple only manufactures the iOS devices. If I click on that, it tells me the model, that 11 of those devices are iPhone 11, and a couple of devices are iPhone 7, and one device is iPhone X. And this tells me the user ID that was used to enroll this device. If I click on that, it gives me more granular information. So this is the level of granularity that we can achieve, and how to build this up is what we are going to see now. Okay, so let me just close this, and I don't want to save it. So I just wanted to show you what I already had, and now we are going to see how to generate that kind of a report. Okay, so the first thing that I have to do is obviously go to my portal and then grab hold of the Intune data warehouse URL. I just copied it. I'm already logged in. I'm just going to click on, so I'm already logged in over here, you can see, and over here also you can see. And then I'm going to click on get data. And then over here, I'm going to click on O data feed. I'm going to click over there, and then it's going to ask me for the data warehouse URL. I enter the URL and then I click on OK. If you're doing it for the first time, it might make you log in again. Then there is an option called organizational account. You just have to click on that option and then enter your username and password. Once we do that, then these are all the tables in our Intune data warehouse. Okay, in the database. So you know that all the data in the database is in form of tables. So now if I want to, so the report that I want to generate, it is going to query data from any of those tables, right? Any of these tables. So if I don't know which table I have to use, then I will suggest selecting all of these. If we know which table to use, then probably we can just select those. So right now I just want to select all the tables that we have in the database. So let me just quickly select all of them, and even when I'm clicking on any of these, it is actually telling me what is the information present in that table as well, right? So you can see that there are so many tables for each of them, and each table contains so many information. So this user table contains all the list of users, the user ID, the user UPN, and all the list of users that I have in the environment, right? So this is a test environment, obviously, therefore doesn't have much data. But I mean, depending upon your environment, it might take some time. See over here, when I'm clicking on policies, it's containing the kind of policies that I have, the policy name, and the is it deleted, is it not deleted, when was it created, when was it modified, all the information, right? So this is how it is present in the Intune database. And then whenever we are clicking on any blade in the Intune portal, the Intune portal loads that information from these tables, and we are going to do the same thing from Power BI as well. So I selected all the fields or all the tables, and now if I want to make any changes over here, if I want to remove duplicacy or something like that, I have the option of clicking on transform data or edit. I don't want to do that, so I just want to load all the tables. So I'm just going to click on load. So when I click on load, you can see that now Power BI is querying my Intune data warehouse location of the tenant, and then it is loading all this information. Obviously, you need to have access to the internet or the Intune service to make this happen. And the account that has been used to log into this Power BI should have a Power BI license and should be a global admin or an Intune admin. Okay, so right now you can see that this is loading and no other information is there at the background. This is empty, which would be for you. This is all empty. Visualization is there, but below that values, this is all empty. On the right hand side fields, this is all empty. So once those tables are loaded, all those tables will show up over here as fields. Okay, so each field signifies a table in the Intune data warehouse. So right now all the tables are loading and we are waiting for the fields to load. Okay, so let's just wait for this to happen, and then once it has been loaded, we will see how we can play along with that. And this is something which I wanted to show you guys. This is an awesome tech community article. So I think it just now loaded, but while that happens, I just wanted to tell you how to search this. You just need to type tech community Power BI Intune, and Aaron Hamilton. He is one of our program managers in Microsoft, and he has written an awesome article on how to make Power BI and create customized report. So this is what even I am referencing right now, and it has all the steps that you need to perform in order to make this happen. So over here you can see he's fetching the Intune data warehouse URL, then he's going to get data, then he's entering this over here, and then whatever columns or whatever fields you select from here, right? I mean, over here he has decided to select only these 4 columns, so I selected all of them. So if you select only these 4 columns, only these 4 columns are going to load, and once they are loaded, they will show in the fields option. So if I go back over here, now you can see that it is showing all of these in the fields option. Okay, all right. So now it has been loaded, and now we can start with our visualization. Okay, so the first thing that I need to select is how do I want the data to be displayed. I can have the data to be displayed in any of these formats or even more. We can get more visualization as well. So I am going to select, let's just say, stacked column chart or stack bar chart. Okay, so I click over here and this pops up. It's just a layout. Right now we have not provided it any input. Right now it is just showing the layout of how it is going to look. If I click over here, it's going to be shown in form of a pie chart. If I click over here, it's going to change to a donut chart or a graph or a table, whatever I want it to be. So right now I am going back to the stacked column chart. Now I have to provide it inputs. Okay, and you will see that as we change the visualization, the options below also changes, because obviously if I'm selecting a chart like this, it has a x-axis and a y-axis, right? So therefore it has this has some, when we are selecting this under visualization, it's telling us to choose the axis. However, if I select the pie chart, the axis is not there, right? It is having something else like a legend, okay, which more or less means the same thing. Let me just go back over here, and now I am going to select what is the input for this chart. Okay, so what it says is, let's just go back to the doc first. So over here also doc is saying the same thing, which says that we are going to start building the charts. They have selected this option, and then uh, we can just resize the size of the visualization as we want to. And then what they're doing is they're adding, the first thing they want to do is get a count of the devices in the environment. Okay, and for that they're going to devices and exporting the device ID. So we'll do the same thing if I go into the device. So right now the aim is getting a pictorial representation of all the devices in my environment. Okay, a count of all the devices. So obviously for that I'll have to go into the devices field, which correlates with the devices table in the database. So I'm going to expand that, and then there is something called device ID. Okay, I just click on device ID, and then what does it say? Let's just go back here. It says that we have to drag it to the values field. So it seems my screen froze for a moment. Again, I'm clicking on device ID, and then let me just uncheck it. Let me just make sure. Yeah, this is selected. I select on device ID, and now I am going to, in the access we don't have to select anything, but in the values the device ID needs to be dragged. So I'm just going to drag it to the device ID into the values, but in the access I don't want anything. Okay, so then now this is giving me a count of all the devices in my environment, and you can see it is almost 138-ish. Okay, so now let's just say that I don't want all the devices. I want to put in some filters. So how do I do that? Let me just go back over here. I'm just going to follow this document to the dot, and then I'll try and show you guys some fun part. So over here it says that you immediately should see a bar representing total device counts in your in your tenant, which is the case. I see around 138 devices. And then it tells me that if you don't want, if you're only interested in active Android devices, then you can put in a filter as well. So let's until now what we have done is we have gone into the visualization and selected the visualization how we want it to be visualized, and then we have selected the table and the attribute from the table which I want to be visualized. Now let's just say that I don't want all these values. I don't want all the devices. I only want Android devices. So what I'll have to do is I'll click the device ID, and the device ID which I dragged into the value section, I'm now going to drag it to the filter section. Okay, and this lets us do filtering. Okay, so I'm just going to, this is the filter section over here, right? Filter on all pages. So I'm going to scroll down, and then I am going to select on advanced filtering, and then I am going to do okay, let me just try this again. Filter on all pages or filter on this page, we can do either. And then once I do that, I am going to device ID. Let me just see, what am I missing here? Okay, so okay, expanded device type. Okay, all right. So I obviously cannot filter it for an operating system right now, because this contains all the device IDs. You'll understand in a while. So what I'm trying to say is I now will have to get, so now the requirement is I only want to see the Android devices and not the iOS devices and Windows devices in my environment. Okay, so for that what I'll have to do, I'll have to collapse the devices table, expand the device types, and the third one amongst that is device type by device name. So I'm going to select that device name. Let me just clear the filter. Okay, this is how we would be by default. Right now there is no filter applied, so all this is empty as it should be. and I am going to select the device type, the third one, and I'm going to add it over here, drag it and drop it over here under filter on this page. Just when I do that, right now in the visualization, we can see nothing has changed. We still have around 138 devices. But now what happens is, let's just say I just want to see the Windows devices in my environment. I just click on Windows, and then you can see that there are around 31 Windows devices. The count of device ID changed in the visualization. So now I have only Windows devices. Now I can only see the Windows devices in my environment. If I change Windows, if I click on unknown, then there are no unknown devices. If I click on not available, there are no not available devices as well. If I don't check anything, or if I check everything, it in both the cases gives me the same output, that is the list of all the devices enrolled to my tenant. So right now let's just say that I just want Android devices, so I'm going to click on Android, and then I'm going to click on Android Enterprise, and then Android for Work. So it has got two subcategories. Probably it should, I mean, it would make more sense because Android for Work and Android Enterprise is the same thing, just two different names. So right now you can see that there are almost 69 devices which are Android devices enrolled in my tenant. Okay. So now we are down to the same information as we had over here. Uh, as we were only interested in Android devices, we expanded the device type, and the page level filter, we added Android, Android Enterprise, Android for Work, and we selected advanced filtering and removed everything for blank. Okay. All right. So once that is done, then we haven't. I mean, if there are any devices deleted, we can add a filter for the deleted devices as well. Right now, I know that there are no devices deleted, therefore I'm not going to delete anything. The next thing it says that now we would like to be able to break out our Android devices by OS version. So to break it down by OS version, what it says is, under the device field, we are going to expand the device field, select the OS version, and then add it to the axis, because we want the OS version in the below axis. So the requirement is, in the x-axis, I want all the OS version of the 69 devices which are present over here. So the way to do that is, I'm going to expand devices. Okay, so we have this option, the OS version is what we have to use. We have to copy it and drag it under the axis. Just when we drag it under the axis, it tells me that out of the all 69 devices that we had in our environment, this is the count. So if we count this, this is around 37, and then around 20, and then we have blank as well, which I should have removed. And then if I count all of these, it is going to be a total of around 68 or 69, which it was showing to begin with. Okay, so we have the same information as we have it over here. Depending upon the OS version, all the chart is stacked up just like we have over here as well. Okay, cool. And now we are going, it tells us about how we can sort this. So the way to sort that would be, we just have to click on this three dots and then sort by OS version and then ascending order. So we are going to click over here, sort by OS version, and then we are going to do sort in ascending order. Okay. All right, cool. So I think I should have the option of removing blank as well. Or I mean, if we want, we can just remove blank as well from the filter. Right now, I'm not removing the blank because this would let the admin know that there are some devices which are showing blank under their OS field as well. Okay, so probably those information is not captured in the portal. All right, so now it says that now your chart should have all the Android devices broken out by the OS version and sorted in ascending order. Yes, that is the case for me. I've got all the OS version. I've got all the devices depending upon the OS version sorted in an order. Okay. All right. Now, it tells us now if you want to exclude. So did they have? Yeah, they had blank over here as well. So it says that now if you want to exclude blank values, now it says that if we want to exclude blank values or failed enrollment or other issues, we can add a page filter again based on the OS version under devices, drag it to the OS version to the page filter, advanced filtering is not blank. Okay. So OS version. So it's telling again to add another filter, and then it is saying advanced filtering and is not blank. Okay, and then just when I click on apply filter, that blank option is also gone. So now I don't have any blank or the failed enrollment information as well. So now I have only the devices which are Android Enterprise, Android for Work, enrolled to my tenant, and they are based on their operating system version sorted in a specific order. Okay. Cool. So next we are going to add the ability to see each of the OS version and the patch levels. So click on your chart, expand the devices, and then select Android security patch level and drag it to the legends on the visualization blade. So we have something called Android security patch level as well. So where is it? It is under devices. So I'm going to go to devices, and then this is the one, Android security patch level. I'm going to select the Android security patch level, and then click on the legends, and then it gives me the information of the Android security patch level as well. So anything up to 2017 is in light blue, and so this is the color combination that is there. So I mean, it correlates. So this is the same report that we are getting over here as well. Now we are going to enable drill down. What drill down means is right now it is just giving us this information, right? But if we click anywhere, nothing happens. So let's just say that right now we have got almost 20 devices which are running with operating system version 7, Android 7 in my environment. Okay. What if I want to see those 7 devices? So I want the ability to enable drill down. What that would mean is if I click over here, it would then take me to a page which would show me all those 19 devices which are running with Android version 7. That's what drill down is. So then what we have to do is whatever option we want to enable in drill down, we just have to add it to the access. So right now in the access, the only thing that is added is the OS version, which we are seeing over here. But we also want to add, let's just say, if I go into devices, let's just say I also want to add the manufacturer to the access. I just added the manufacturer to the access. What else can we, I mean, we can add anything that we want to add into the access. And then it's telling us we can add the OS version manufacturer, and we can add the UPN as well, user principal name under users. So let's just do that as well, and then I'll show you guys what difference does it make. So I'm just going to go to users, and then there should be the display name, and then I am going to add the display name as well. Okay, now I am going to click over here which says that click to turn on drill down. So I just click over here, and now drill down has been enabled. What has happened now is if I'm looking at this chart, I can see that these are all the Android devices that I have in my environment, depending upon their operating system version and depending upon their Android security patch level. So I've got a couple of devices which are running with Android version 2. If I take the mouse over there, it just gives me the count as well. I have got 15 devices which are running with Android version 10.0. I've got one device which is running with Android version 6.0. I've got 16 devices which are running with Android version 7.0. Now let's just say that I want to see which are these 7 devices. Now let's just say that my aim is I just want to see that okay, in my environment there are a lot of devices which are running with Android version 7. How about I upgrade these devices from Android 7 to Android 10? But before I can do that, I need to know what are those devices, which model are those devices, and who has enrolled those devices, right? So to get that, what I've done is we have already added the information in the access. These are the information that we need, and we have enabled the drill down. So now if I click anywhere, if I just click on, what I did was I just clicked on this 7, that is all the devices which are enrolled to my tenant and have an operating system version of 7. Just when I click over there, the next information that comes in, instead of the OS, now the next information that comes in is the manufacturer. So now you can see that in the axis it says manufacturer and it tells me Samsung and Xiaomi. What this means is, out of all the devices that I have in my tenant which have the Android version of 7, I have got 16 devices which are Samsung and 3 devices which are Xiaomi. Okay, now if I want to see who has enrolled these devices, I just have to click over that, and then it tells me that one of those devices does not have any user affiliation. 8 of those devices are enrolled by this ID, and 4 of them are enrolled by test 1, 2 of them are enrolled by test 2. Okay, so this is what drill down is. By default, it will show you the main page, if you would call it, the main page of the dashboard. And then just when you click anywhere, it just takes you deeper inside and you have the option of seeing what is the manufacturer, what is the display name, and we have an option of adding as many drill downs as we want to. So if I want to see what are the policies coming down to this device, I can add that in the access as well. Just when I'll click on that policies, it will tell me that what are the policies that are deployed to a specific device, what is the compliance policy that is deployed to that specific device. So let's just come back over here in the access. We also added all of these, and just when we add anything, let's just say that in the user we have added the display name. Therefore you see there is that yellow check in the users, which means that we have added anything in the users. We have used a field from this column, and under devices also we have used the Android security level and the device ID. And over here you can see that all of them have been added, and in the legend we added the Android security patch level. We have also used the filter over here on the left hand side. Let's see what it talks about now. So now it says that now you can click on the downward arrow on your chart to enable drill down. And just when we have enabled drill down, if we click anywhere, it takes us to the insight. We can add slicer over here as well. So slicer is just like a radio button, which gives us the option if I just want 7.0, 7.1, or we can do it from the filter on the left hand side as well. All right. And then we have the option of publishing it. But before we publish it, I would like to show you guys how we can format this as well. So let's just say that, let me just go all the way back. So let's just say that this is the, let me just disable the drill down for a while. Let's just say that this is the Android version level, and the x-axis and y-axis is on. Let's just say that I want to change the color for some reason. Then I have that option as well. I can just change it to white if I would like to, or I can just, I can customize the color as well, depending upon what my usage is. I can change the font. So over here, I'm changing the font which is being displayed. And then I can select the category. I can select the width. I can select the title. Okay, and then we have something called data color. So over here it is showing me the color for each of the fields, right? So for a specific patch level, let's just say this is set to blue, but I don't want it to be set to blue. I want it to be set to, let's just say, yellow. So I do that and it gets changed automatically. Okay, this is just for making it more intuitive and more graphical. And then we have something called data labels, and we can change the orientation as well. So the orientation by default was set to horizontal, which means that it is written, the values inside are written in horizontal way. If we want, we can change it to vertical. This is just how would you like it to show. So right now it is showing, let's just say I want to show it as inside, or if I want, I can change it to inside center. So this is the location of the device count. So it is showing, let's just say I've got around 38 devices over here, right? So where do I want to show a specific device? So all these devices are the ones which are running with a security patch level of 1 to 2020, right? This one is running with 1 for 2020. So there are 4 such devices. There are 15 such devices with this patch level. So this is where that number is showing up, right? So I can determine what is going to be the font for this number, what is going to be the orientation of this number, whether it's going to be inside in the center, whether it's going to be inside at the end, whether it is going to be inside at the base. I mean, where I want this to display and what is going to be the size of this. I can increase it, I can decrease it, whatever my uh, use may be. And then we have something called title. Uh, uh, we have something called background. If I change the background to black, this is how the background changes as well. So I mean, this is just for, we can just use contrast colors over here. So let's just say that I want to use something which looks a little better, maybe this, or maybe something in pink. No, that doesn't look good. Maybe sky blue. Yeah, this looks a little bit more presentable. So yeah, this is how we are checking the background. We can select the transparency as well. Let me just change it to 100, and then changing it to 100 would mean that everything would be transparent, and then it is equivalent to setting the background as white, which I don't want to do. And then there are something called borders. So you can just explore all of this. There is something called shadow. If I just enable the shadow, and if I just do inside, okay, it's just showing us the shadow. I mean, it's just making the format a little bit more pretty. That is what it does. Okay guys, so now I want to show you guys and to make another report which is related to compliance. And this is how I would like to create the report. I want a report which would show me all the compliant and non-compliant devices in my organization. And just when I click into a section, let's just say I click on not compliant, and it tells me all the devices that are not compliant. If I click on a specific device, it tells me the user who has enrolled it, the device ID, the operating system, and whatnot. So this is the level of granularity that I want in a report in a pictorial representation. So let's just see how we can get that done. So this time, let me just select a pie chart. So let me just select a pie chart first and then make it big enough so that large enough so that I can see. And then I am going to select the compliance state. So the compliance state shows whether the device is compliant or not. Just when I click on it, it gets added into the legend, and I'm going to drag it and add it to the values. Just when I add it to the values, you can see that these are, don't go by this as 1. So I mean, this is not the number of devices or the percentage. So right now it has 4 sections: compliant, not yet available, unknown. Okay, so I am guessing that not yet available and unknown devices are the ones that were enrolled at some point of time but are no longer enrolled. Okay, so what I need to do now is get rid of these two. And the way I'll do that is by adding a filter. So I'm just going to drag the same compliance status into the filter section. This is the filter section. It says add data field over here. I'm going to drag and drop it over here. Then I'm going to do a select all, but uncheck unknown, not yet available, and blank. Okay, so now it gives me only compliant and non-compliant devices. But I just don't want to know how many devices are compliant and how many devices are non-compliant. I need the details of those devices as well. So by details, I mean that let's just say I want the first thing that I want is the operating system, that which operating system is not compliant. So I add it into the legend. So below compliance state, I have operating system. Now let's just say that I click, let me just enable the drop down. So from here, I can enable the drill down. So what will happen now? Let's just say that there are some compliant devices, there are some non-compliant devices. The manager looks at this and says that, oh, I have a lot of not compliant devices. If he clicks over here, now he sees how many of those not compliant devices are Android, how many of those are iOS, how many of those are Windows. as it happens in my case, all of the not compliant devices are Android devices. But that's just not it. I now want to see that out of the all non-compliant Android devices, what are the device models? So which device model is the one which is not compliant? So let's just say that there is some encryption policy, or there is some kind of policy, compliance policy, and all the Huawei devices or Xiaomi devices are getting marked as not compliant. Then that's a good information for a manager to know, right? He would know that, okay, this compliance policy for some reason is not working the way we want it to in a specific make and model of device. So I'm just going to select the model, and I am going to add it over here as well. So I think I added it twice. Okay. So if I click on Android, now it tells me the model. I've got OnePlus, Pixel, Samsung, a few models of Samsung. But that's just not it. Maybe let's just say that, okay, I know the model, but there are so many OnePlus devices, right? How do I know which device exactly is not compliant? So for that, obviously, we will have to add something like a device display name, right? Or a device name. So let me just drag the device name over here. I don't think it got added. Let me just select device name, and then I'm adding device name over here. If I click on tab, okay, it tells me the name of the device. And then okay, I know the name of the device, but who is using this device? I need to add the display name as well, right? So I just added the display name over here. I think it got added twice. Okay, that's about it. So now let's just review what this report is looking all like. Okay guys, so let's just look at the usability of this report. So let's just say let's just see what is the use of this kind of a report. So let's just say I'm a manager and I'm looking at this report. How do I utilize this? So assuming we have, let's just say 10,000 or 20,000 devices in my environment, I look at this report and I realize that out of all the devices I have, so many of them are compliant, so many of them are not compliant. Okay, very well. Now the manager decides to click on the non-compliant devices in his environment. Now it intuitively tells him out of all the non-compliant devices, how many of them are Android, how many of them are iOS. As it happens in my case, all the non-compliant devices are Android devices. Okay, this is a useful information. The manager knows that most of the devices in his tenant are Android that are not being shown as compliant. But that is not just it. I mean, that is not a conclusive information. So he can click on this, and then he can see that out of all the non-compliant devices, what are the make and model of the devices which are becoming not compliant. So I see that there are a whole bunch of OnePlus devices. There are some Google Pixel devices. There are some Pixel devices. There are a lot of Samsung devices as well. Let's just say the manager wants to know about the OnePlus device. So he clicks on that, and then he sees all the OnePlus devices which are not compliant. He clicks on a specific device, and then that device gives him the display name of the device, as well as this is the display name of the user who has enrolled the device. So this is the level of granularity he can get. He can see the device, he can find out who is the user who has enrolled the device, and then we can add in something like an Intune device ID as well. So let me just see here. I should have under devices, devices, I should have something like a device ID, right? So if I add the device ID, then if I double click on this, it would actually tell me the Intune device ID. This is the level of granularity and level of drill down that we can get you. This is the power of Power BI, as I've been saying so many times. This is the level of granularity that we can get using Power BI, and in an intuitive fashion. So we didn't have to do anything to create the chart, to create any of these. All the visualization were there out of the box. All we had to do was select them and then query the respective field. And if I don't like this, if I just have to change this, I can change it to a donut chart. I can change it to a bar chart. So again, I can see the compliant and non-compliant devices. Then I can see the model. And if I go to OnePlus, I can see all the devices that are not compliant. If I double click on a device, I can see the device ID as well. So that's pretty much it. And there is something called establishing relationships as well. So by default, the relationship between all the tables are already established when when the Power BI queries the Intune data warehouse. But we have the ability of establishing relationships as well between tables in order to query them. I'm not going to go into the very details of that because that would actually be out of the scope of Intune. But yeah, I mean, Power BI is a very powerful tool which can be used for reporting, and then it is up to us. It is just like Excel, right? You can do so many kinds of filters and formatting in Excel, and then it's the world is your playground, right? So similarly, this is the thing I wanted to show. And then we also have the ability of publishing this report. So if I click over here and click on publish, then first thing I have to do is I have to save it. So I'm clicking on save. I am going into the desktop, and let me just call this demo Power BI. Okay, it saves it as a .pbix file. It is saved, and now it is going to be published. So once it gets published, it is going to ask me to create a workspace if a workspace already does not exist to begin with. Otherwise, it is going to publish it to a workspace. So over here, I have a workspace already. So I selected the workspace that I wanted, and now it is publishing the demo Power BI to a PBIX to a Power BI online version of Power BI, so that it can be accessed not only via the Power BI desktop client but online as well. And then we can make a dashboard out of this as well, which would keep on refreshing it. So it would be kind of a live dashboard, if you would call it. So right now it is publishing the demo Power BI. So let's just wait for this to finish. Okay, it has been published. And then I can click on open demo Power BI in Power BI. So now it will redirect me to the Power BI website. I can just sign in over here. Let me just sign into this. Okay. And then I see the same report over here as well. Let me just, okay. So I think a better demonstration was not this, but I think this was looking better. And then, yes, I want to replace it because that one was not looking that well. Let me just see here. So this was getting published again, and then it will be accessible again in the online version of Power BI. Okay, I'm going to click on this again. It is going to open another tab, and then got it. And then if I enable drill down from here, which I suspect is already enabled, turn on drill down, and then I can see uh, then I can see the same information which I was seeing over there as well. It tells me display name up to device ID, and if I want, I can add more drill downs as per the need. So that's pretty much it, guys. That is all I wanted to show as far as the demo goes. And then I have the option of, let's just say, I have the option of creating a dashboard as well. So if I pin that to a dashboard, then if I pin that to a dashboard, then I won't have to search for that report. It will be visible to me each time. So let me see here. And then, okay, let's just see what other, okay, so this is the option to share it. So I have the option of sharing it to somebody. I can just enter an email ID, and then it would be shared to that user, and that user can access it via the link as well. So the link will go to that user, and that user can access the Power BI report. So so that's pretty much it, guys. That's all that I wanted to demonstrate today in the Nugget. So I know that the power of Power BI is unlimited. There are so many things that we can possibly do with Power BI and make the visualization better and better. So I would strongly suggest you guys to make use of this tool to integrate it. There are so many things with which Power BI can be integrated. Now it can be integrated with log analytics as well and whatnot. So on which we'll do a separate Nugget later on. But I hope that this gave us a head start, and now we know how to do the integration with Intune of Power BI. What is the importance? What is the advantage of doing this, and how it makes our life so much easier as compared to, I mean, as far as the reporting is concerned. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope that this has been informative for you. I would like to thank you for viewing. This is your friend Saurabh Sarkar signing off.